Welcome back to Dave Knows Comics. Today's another drawing session, and this one is a fan request. It's Power Girl. Now, let's get started. As you can see, sped this one up quite a bit. I think you guys have gotten the gist of my style by now. And also, we're doing the foundational work here, so nothing out of that ordinary here. Okay, so as you can see, I'm drawing the outline now. Since this is Power Girl, I want her to have a very dynamic stance, a very powerful stance, which is very good for super strong characters. So she's got this pose right here, which I like, limbs out, looks very dynamic, looks very superhero-like, so that's good. All right, now also working about this. Now, as you can see, I did things a little differently. I started with almost like a stick figure to be my guide, just because I wanted to check things like proportions and make sure the arms and everything are the right length before I actually started doing the pre-drawing. And now that I have the outline set, I'm going to start working on some details here. Now, Power Girl is a very simple costume, so I'm not so worried about that, but I am worried about her face. I'm worried about making sure we have the right expression. I want her to seem powerful here, so that also translates to the face. So it's not just the body language, even though that's part of it. And as I was talking about making sure the limbs were in the right position, see, now that I start drawing and looking at it, I realize her arms might be a little long, so I want to shorten them up a bit. It's one of those things that every once in a while when you're drawing, you have to step back, because if you sit there and just stare at it and you're in the zone, you might not see the bigger picture, pun intended here. So another thing about Supergirl is her hair. Now, Power Girl, her hair. It's easy to make it look like a wig, and we don't want that. So her haircut should definitely look, and I like the short haircut for her. I think it works. I think it works for the character, but you gotta make sure it doesn't seem too wig-like, like that Lego plastic hair that just pops on. You wanna give it some texture, and you also want it to flow. You don't want it to be so perfect. And right here, I'm drawing, let's be honest, one defining feature, and I'm a very big believer that comic book characters should have defining features, permanent features that every character, if a comic book character has, a pointy nose, then everybody should draw with a pointy nose. But, Power Girl definitely has one defining feature, and I think you figured out what it is, so. But anyway, yeah, I know there's this whole animus against the over-sexualization of women, and I agree to that. In comic books, there's too much of that going on. But when it comes to certain comic book characters, it's a defining trait, and I feel that you shouldn't say, "Hey, no character should be built like that." There should be characters built all different ways, and so Power Girl just happens to be one of those characters that is built like this. So I think we shouldn't over-sexualize all female characters, but if one or two of them possess a certain body type, they shouldn't be shamed for it. And so that's my stance. I feel that Power Girl is one of those characters. Anyway, talked about that for way too long. Let's move on here. Drawing her cape. It's behind her. She has that short cape, a short cape, which I like. I think it's a cool design. Shazam has that. Has that too. Okay, so satisfied with the drawing. I think it actually looks pretty good. Now, I'm going here with the ink, just penciling as always. I like to go right in for the eyes when I'm finalizing my drawing. And working on her mouth. Now, this particular facial expression, as I said, I was really working on the facial expression. I will admit that she does look a little villainous. And I think I kind of did that on purpose because I always view her, Power Girl, as a villain. Maybe it was that Justice League episode where she was Galatea, or some of her times on the not nicest side of things. But I know she can be portrayed either way. She can be more heroic, or she can be more villain-like. It depends on who's writing her, and I think that's kind of the fun of the character. But either way, she definitely has that villainous look here. So we know which side of the line I stand on for Power Girl. Alright, so moving on is the rest of the outfit. Going on to her. Yeah, again, the arms. While I wanted them to be big and bold and out there, I realized that I might have just made them a little too long, so going back and correcting it with the pencil. So I was touching on a few things, so switching back to the pencil. Okay, and now we're back on to the pen. We're at this weird sash thing that holds her cape on. and her belt. Now, because her costume is so simple, because it's so streamlined and easy to do, you almost have to pay more attention to the few details there are, like her belt, like this little rope holding on her cape, this middle medallion thing on her shoulder, also holding up the cape, and her gloves. You have to pay more attention to that, or to give it some contrast, or to make it not flat looking. You have to make sure that you spend more time on the few details and elements that you do have, which is why I also want to work on the face as much as I did. And she has a clear expression on her face because it counts even more, because you're not gonna be distracted by some other garb on her costume. So the elements that normally your eyes gravitate towards are going to get the best results, or should have the best amount of attention to them, just because they're gonna draw your eye. Alright, so working on her legs now, and now going down to these boots. As I said, different features. They have this little cuff there, so I want to make sure I make that cuff very pronounced. I don't want to hug in the body too tight, don't want to hug in those calves too much, because it's a perfect opportunity to give some details by having them flare out. So it's a detail on a very simple costume. You gotta take it. You gotta take advantage of it. Alright, so now cleaning up a little bit with the eraser, because I like what I'm seeing here. I like the way this is going, and just the way the pencil work is. Now, I like this drawing for what it is, but when I scan it in digitally to do some coloring, these pencils gave me a good indication of shadow and how to make things look a little more three-dimensional, and when I colorize things, I'm going to be using that. And also, as I said, in terms of texture and details, I added this little almost metallic shadow shine, this little sheen to the gloves. Now, that's not traditional, but it does give her gloves just a little bit more, it gives them a little more of a texture to it. So it looks not like just a flat blue glove, a boring blue glove. Okay, so now going on now, because once again, to add detail, I'm using thicker lines in certain places, so I've switched over to a marker. And on the underside of her arms and on the left side of her body, as well as on the right side of her right leg too, around certain places I'm using the marker to thicken things, to have a thick line. Now, this creates more weight, and on the bottom it makes it like shadow, so it makes it a little heavier looking, but on the sides of the legs it's making it stand out, so it makes the outside of the legs look a little darker, while the inside is a little bit brighter, thus making it look a little more three-dimensional. Here I added a little too much, so I actually went back with the whiteout to thin it out. I still want it there, but I didn't want it as thick because I want more of that shadow leaning on the right side. Alright, and now going back to the marker for the cape, just the easy way to create shadow. This marker in particular has a brush side to it, and that's what I'm using. These brush sides are great for creating cloth and textures. And it's going to be mostly dark, very, very few bits of light coming through, because it's, the back, it's not as illuminated, it's the back shadow, so there's that. Okay, now going over with the whiteout pen. Now I'm retouching up details on her belt and that little medallion on her shoulder. Why? Because I went over one layer with a couple of ink marks, and then I'm going over it again with the whiteout, therefore giving it that metallic reflection look. Okay, so her hair's there. Yeah, no, I'm just giving a final once over. Now it's time to do the background. Now I'm focusing more on the background details. Now I'm using this tissue here, and I'm using my thinner Sumi ink to go over the little flecks of white spots that I left white on the background of her cape. Why? Because once again, it's got to be dark because it's behind her, and makes her pop out. But using the Sumi ink, even though I left the spots white and I'm covering it up with black ink, it's not completely black, so therefore it does create two different shades. And now I'm also using the tissue here, tissue dipped in the Sumi ink that's almost dried out. I'm just using it to create a little bit of shadowing in the gloves to make them a little darker, on the underside of things, on the underside of stuff. I'm going back and touching up a few details with the pen now. Going pretty good, I would say. I do like this drawing. Okay, but we need a heroic, dynamic pose, so we need to go with the big splash. And to achieve that effect, I'm going to be using a combination of the tissue here and of course the brush, just to get some major parts of ink down. So I'm doing that and smearing with the tissue, smearing. And now that the brush has dried out a little bit, which is good, gives me more of this less complete look. It gives me these streaks, these paintbrush bristle looks to it, which I like for the starburst almost, if you will. So it's like she's bursting onto the scene, filled with power. I'm doing this in this radial pattern, which is really nice. So I like that. I like that a lot. And it's a good look. And here we go, scanned it into the computer digitally. Now, as you can see, I kept a lot of those shadow elements in there. I added a little shadow to the front of her thighs too. That way it made her knees pop out a little bit more, give you that three-dimensional look. And I really like the way I shadowed this, or shaded this in the computer. I thought it came out really good. And there you go. So if you had any ideas of what you want to see me draw next time, let me know. Or maybe I'll get to it in another video, since I got a fair amount of requests. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel. And as always, Dave knows.